All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started because we're 5 minutes after the start time now. Um, what I'm going to be talking about right now is EagleVision. I'm going to show you guys how to access it in Canvas. I'm going to show you the different parts and pieces of it and how each one of them works. And I'll go over when is the best time to use EagleVision because really what it is, and let me switch over here to my my different view. Alright, so what EagleVision is it's an excellent tool for video conferencing. So you can use it for online classes, meetings, trainings, and like this. You can use it for a webinar. One of the things you might be wondering is what about Skype? Because here at the university we do promote a tool called Skype for Business that we use for scheduling out virtual meetings. Really, for academic use is what we recommend EagleVision for, and for more of like a collaborative meeting is what we'll recommend Skype for. The one big exception for that is really going to be if the meeting needs to be recorded. EagleVision's recording tools are a lot better. All the processing happens live in the cloud. So once you stop the recording is actually immediately available. That is, unless you want to export it to an MP4 file that you can go host somewhere else. It also has some built-in editing tools so that you can trim the beginning and the end out if there's a lot of dead space. Thank you, Rustin, for joining. I'm going to keep an eye on the attendees to make sure that I see everyone as they're coming in. Rustin, I've enabled your microphone just in case you want to participate via audio. Feel free to step in and ask anything. Otherwise, I'll keep an eye on the chat if you have any questions. All right, so I kind of went over a little bit about when to use Skype. Let's go ahead and check it out. So what I'm doing here is I'm jumping over to Canvas. This should be a familiar environment to you. And I'm going to use my Sandbox course to show you how to access EagleVision from your Canvas course. The purpose of this webinar, I'm going to show you how to use it for academic use, not so much for meetings. So I'll show you how to access it outside of Canvas, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So when you're in your Canvas course, you'll see something similar to this. What we're looking for is an EagleVision button over in your course navigation. If you don't see it, the way to enable it is to go to Settings, and then go to the Navigation tab, and down here in the disabled items, you should find EagleVision as one of these items. All you need to do is just click and drag it up to the top, scroll down and click Save, and then we will have EagleVision enabled in our course. Now, EagleVision should be in the course templates that we provide to everybody, so it should be enabled by default. When we visit this tool, this is the interface that we're going to see. Now, if this is your first time accessing this page, you may get a prompt to allow EagleVision access to your Canvas account. Just go ahead and click the Allow button. It's perfectly fine to give it permission, and you'll be good to go. So, what we're seeing here is we have a section for course meetings, and we have a separate section for office hours, and then we've got some support information down here. Before getting started with Adobe Connect, that's what EagleVision is powered by. It's powered by a platform called Adobe Connect. What we recommend doing is visiting this diagnostic site. And what that's going to do is it's going to do a 4-point inspection on your computer. And as long as everything comes back positive, all the check marks are green, then you should be good to go. Your computer should be able to support EagleVision without an issue. When you registered for this webinar, I did send you a link to the Adobe Connect diagnostic tool to do that yourself. We've also put together some quick start guides and support sites for both students and instructors. And then there's a link that'll bring you to the information technology page if you need any technical support. So let's go ahead and add a meeting to our Canvas course so that we can jump right into EagleVision. To do that, you just click the Add Meeting button here, and we're going to get prompted with a few settings. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a name for our meeting space, and I'm just going to call this Sandbox Course Meetings. You can name this whatever you'd like. The only thing to keep in mind is it does have to be a unique name. I don't think that the name can be shared with another meeting space, so you may need to personalize it a little bit. And then we need to select a template, and what we're seeing here is two different templates that we set up. So this is going to be for our course meetings. I'm going to choose the course meetings template, but the office hours template is a very similar template to the course meetings one. It just doesn't have as many options, and I'll get into that. I'll show you that as soon as we're done creating this. We are actually going to be adding a third template here, and that third template will be called Webinars and Meetings, and that'll be simplified even further. So just keep that in mind. I'll explain that once we're able to jump in. So I'm selecting Course Meetings, and we've got some optional settings down here. Now, 99 times out of 100, you will not need to touch any of these settings down here, but I'll show them to you just in case. One of the options is to create a custom URL. So if you noticed, the URL that you clicked to access this training was eaglevision.adobeconnect.com/IT for instructional technology. You can add a custom URL for your meeting space if you'd like to, and that'll exist for the remainder of your course. That way, your students can access it via a link if you don't want them to access it through Canvas for some reason. I do recommend having them access it through Canvas because we don't use accounts. We use a single sign-in tool. So in order for students to get into it, we can't use registered users. So you're going to want them to have anyone who has the URL for the meeting selected if you're going to give out the custom URL. That way anybody can get into your meeting and you don't need to worry about accepting everyone as they request to get in. And when you're done with this, all we got to do is we can click Save and everything will happen automatically, but I'm going to bring you to the next tab just to show you what's happening. So in my course, I'm the only one enrolled in it. But in your course, you're going to have one teacher and you're going to have a certain number of students that are enrolled in your course. So what this is doing is it's actually creating a single sign-on connection between Canvas and Adobe Connect. So you'll see that I'm listed here in Canvas. It enabled the single sign-on for me in Adobe Connect. And because I'm a teacher in my course, it brought me into Adobe Connect as a host. If I had students that were enrolled in this course, they would be listed here under Canvas as students, and they would be brought into Adobe Connect as participants. Now there's three roles that are available inside of Adobe Connect. You have hosts, you have presenters, and then you have participants. The host is going to be the one with the most control, and the participants are going to have the least amount of control over the meeting space. And I will get to that as soon as we're able to jump into Adobe Connect. So I clicked that Finish button there, and now we have a course meeting set up. To get into it, all we need to do is click this Join button. Now, again, if this is your first time loading Adobe Connect, you may be prompted to download a plugin. Otherwise, it's just going to open up automatically. And when it is finished loading, we're going to get a little introduction screen, and we're going to get a whole different set of layouts that we're ready to go here. So I'm going to do my best to go over what we're seeing here. And just Keep in mind, this is all customizable. You can change anything that you'd like to change with anything that we're seeing here, because what we have pre-set up, it can be a little overwhelming. There's a lot going on here. So over on the right-hand side, you're going to see that we've got a bunch of different layouts that are available. And I'm going to quickly jump through each one of these layouts. So this first one that you're seeing here is a lobby. And what the goal is with the lobby is this is going to be a space that you can turn on maybe 30 minutes before your class session starts. And we have a countdown timer and a little EagleVision orientation slideshow. You can turn on your webcam. And you can just leave it sitting here, and the students will, when they get here, they'll see the countdown timer and they'll know there's still a certain amount of time before the instructor intends to begin. The next layout that we have prepared is the presentation layout. And our goal with this one is to put a focus on a shared PowerPoint presentation. So this box over here on the left, you would share a PowerPoint presentation. Over on the right, you'd have your webcam enabled, and you still have the chat and the participation pods. The next layout is the discussion layout, and what this does is it puts a focus on the webcam. So you'll notice that the webcam pod that's here, it jumps over to the left, and now this big box on the left is for the webcam. And the goal here is multiple people can have their webcams enabled simultaneously, and everyone can be doing a video conference. The next layout is going to be the screen share. And this layout was created so that you can share your computer screen. It takes the focus off of the video, the web camera, and it puts the focus on the movement of the mouse and the content that's being shared on the computer screen. The next layout that has been pre-configured is the whiteboard layout. And on here, you have a variety of drawing tools that are available to you. And excuse my terrible writing, I'm doing this with a mouse. But if you had a touchscreen laptop, it's actually a lot easier to use. Then there's the YouTube layout, and this layout, it has a pod for YouTube videos that'll allow us to search all public videos that are available on YouTube and play them for students or for participants so that you have control over the playback of the video. So if I were to search for a video and push play, that video will play for everybody. If I push pause, it will pause for everybody. The next layout is the Media Gallery pod. And the Media Gallery pod, this is going to be an integration, an integration with the Kaltura Media Gallery tool that you have available to you in Canvas. So if you're not aware of the Kaltura Media Gallery, I'll jump back over here into Canvas, and I'm going to enable these tools. So again, I'm going to go to Settings, Navigation, and you'll see here there is the My Media and the Media Gallery tools. What these are is it's kind of like our own special edition of YouTube, but it's private videos that are only available inside of Canvas. So I have videos that I've uploaded to the My Media tool, and I can share them to my course's media gallery. And any course that I have published to the media gallery in my course will appear right here inside of the media gallery pod in Adobe Connect in EagleVision. And again, similar to the YouTube layout, if you push the play button, it'll play for everybody. If you push the pause button, it'll pause for everybody. And it plays locally, both the YouTube and the media gallery tools. They play locally on each student's computer. You're not streaming from your computer. So it makes the experience very smooth for everybody. The next layout is a breakout layout, and what it does is it gives a share pod so that someone who's in a breakout room can actually share content. Now, breakout rooms, they're an advanced feature of Adobe Connect, and there isn't really a way for me to demonstrate that without a collection of participants in the meeting space. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to say we had 9 participants in this meeting. What I would be able to do is I can create 3 breakout rooms that have 3 participants each, and then as the host, I would be able to jump through the different breakout rooms and interact with just the students in those groups, and they would be able to interact with each other. And finally, the last layout that we've got set up pre-configured is the wrap-up layout. And here, this is just a pre-configured layout for when you're ending a class session. So the focus is on the webcam, and then we've got some web links, files, and poll pods set up so that you can share any relevant websites, files, or you can ask your students for feedback. Now, everything that we went over, I totally understand if we're a little overwhelmed. So I'm going to go over each item in a little more detail. To do that, I'm going to create a new layout. And I'm just going to create a blank layout. So to do that, what I did was down here in the bottom right corner, I just clicked this little plus button to add a layout. And I'm going to create a new blank layout. All right. So here we have a completely empty space, and I'm just going to add one thing at a time to show you how this is fully customizable and explain each pod to you and demo each pod that's available to you. To add a pod to a layout, all you do is you click on the pods button up on the top, and you'll see that we've got some options available to us. The first pod, the most important pod, is probably the share pod. Now the share pod, what this is it's a pod that allows you to share your computer screen or share a document that you've uploaded. So it's going to give us a box, and we can resize this box. If you just grab one of the corners, we can resize this box any way that we want to, and we can click the toolbar up at the top, and we can drag this anywhere in our layout that we want to. To share our computer screen, we can click the down arrow, and we can choose the option to share my screen. Now, I'm currently on a 3-monitor configuration, so it'll ask me which monitor I want to share, and all I have to do is just select which one I want to share and click the share button. And I would be sharing my computer screen with my audience. Now, I'm going to show you something. When you share your computer screen, you're actually going to get a really small version of Adobe Connect that pops up. So what it does is I can now pull up anything that I want to. I can pull up a web page, or I can pull up sorry, everything's on a different window. So I can pull up a web page, I can pull up a document, and I can share whatever I'd like with my students. But I've also got access to some of my more important pods down here in this little window. Well, it looks like some of these items are grayed out, and I think it might be because I have more than one window open. Oh, no, it's actually because I don't have those pods. So here, before I'm going to stop screen sharing. Cancel. Stop sharing. What I need to do is I need to add the chat pod, and I need to add the participants pod, the attendees pod. There we go. So I've got my chat and my attendees. Now, if I were to share my computer screen, Adobe Connect is minimized, and you'll see down here, I've got access to view my attendee list and to view the chat room that's happening inside of my layout. So really all it's doing is it's minimizing Adobe Connect into a more manageable, tiny interface. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And I guess since I've got these open, I will just explain these a little further. So the chat pod, very obvious. You guys are actually in our meeting space right now using the chat pod to communicate with me and each other. And then there's the attendees pod. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us a list of everyone who's in the meeting space by role. So I said earlier that there's the hosts, there's the presenters, and then there's the participants. So students will come in automatically as participants. Teachers are going to come in automatically as hosts. Now you can promote students if you hover over someone who's participating in your meeting space. You'll get some options, and you can promote them or you can demote them to a different role. You'll have options to mute. If you can all, depending on different settings in your meeting space, you can also enable microphone, enable webcam. There's a few other options that are available to you when you have participants in your meeting space. You also have a few different views. So you'll see here, if I hover over this first tab, right now what I'm viewing is the attendee view. I've also got the breakout room view, and this is where I'm able to create those breakout rooms. And you can easily add people to breakout rooms by just clicking and dragging them around. So if you do get to use this for your classroom, for your class space, and you want to do like group work, this is where you would do that. So you would create a certain number of breakout rooms, and then you just drag the students where you want them to go. Oh, hi, Reg. I didn't see you come in. I'm going to enable your microphone just in case you'd prefer to use that. But you asked the questions, can students request to present? So by default, a participant cannot present, but the instructor can get, the host can give them that ability. So all that they would have to do in order to do that is, here, can I drag? I don't think I can do that because it'll go picture in picture. So let me see if I can. I'm going to try and show you our meeting space without it being confusing. All right, so are you guys able to see inside of the share screen the chat and the participants? Okay, yeah, if I share the other screen, I think it would just be it would be picture in picture in picture in picture, so it would be very confusing to look at. So what I can do is I can hover over any of you, and I have different options here. One of those options, Reg, is going to be to request screen share. So the host would request the student to share their computer screen, and then yes, they can do that. But in order for the student to request that without the instructor's permission, they would have to do that in chat, or actually up at the top, you'll actually see there's a little guy that's raising his hand. He's next to the microphone button. If you click that drop-down button, the student would have the ability to raise their hand. There's other feedback options that are there. So that's how the student would get your attention and choose to do that. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag these around a little bit. Again, this is fully customizable. You don't need to follow the layout that I'm doing here if you're creating your own layouts. You can do this however you choose. And so the important thing to realize is that whatever you see is what your participants see. So what you guys are looking at right now, I've actually got that same exact thing over on my monitor to the side. So I know that what you're seeing is exactly what I want you to see. So I'm going to add another pod here. The next pod is going to be the notes pod. I'm just going to go right down the list. Now what the notes pod is it's kind of like Notepad. It's just a very basic text editor. So you can take notes here. And you can share this information. So whatever you type in here will be shared with your audience. You can make it private. The way to do that is actually to you have access to an area called the presenter only area. And any pods can go in the presenter only area. And the presenter only area is only visible to presenters and hosts. To get that, you just you click on the meeting menu and you enable the presenter only area. So what that does is it creates this black box over here that I can drag pods into, and this black box will not be visible to my participants. All that they will see is everything to the left. All right, so the next pod, that'll be the video pod. Now the video pod, and that opened, excuse me. Oh, wow, excuse me. The next pod is the video pod. Now when you have the presenter only area enabled in your meeting space, when you add a new pod, it's going to appear in the presenter only area, and that's so that you can configure that pod prior to adding it to your meeting space. So with the video pod, the way this is going to work, it's not going to let me share my video twice, but when you click that start share, or what did it say? Start my webcam. When you push the start my webcam button, what this is going to do is it's going to give you a preview of your video. And before you can, so you're not actually sharing quite yet. You actually have to click the start sharing button and then it'll share your video. But I'm going to go ahead and stop so that I'm not confusing my computer and trying to share my video twice. Alright, so the next pod, we already went over the chat pod, so that'll be the files pod. Now, you'll notice that when I clicked on that option, it gave me the option to add the files pod or to add a new file share pod. So when it gives you this option, you have the ability to add multiple pods of the same tool. So here what I can do is I can upload a file from my computer, and I'm going to upload the webinar welcome screen that I used here. So what a participant can do is they can highlight the file and then click the download button, and it'll open up in a browser window and it will give them the ability to download that file. Alright, the next pod is the web links pod. Now again, if there's an existing web links pod, you can add that, or you can add a second pod. So this is useful. I'll explain this a little further. This is useful when you have multiple groups of files or multiple groups of websites, web links that you want to share. So say I have a collection of web links on video conferencing tools, and then I have a separate collection of web links for learning management systems. I may only want to share one of those web links at a time, or one of those collections of web links at a time. So that's the use case there. So I'm going to go ahead and add this one. Now for web links, we can add links to websites. To do that, we click on the little pod options button in the top right, and we add a link. And we can give it a name. So for this, I'm just going to call this Google. And then the URL path will be http://google.com. So now I've added Google as a web link. Now this is a bad example. You might want to link to an article in a database. You may want to link to a library resource page. You may want to link to an internet website that you found that is credible. And you can share these resources with your students. Now, most students, when they connect to Adobe Connect or an EagleVision session the first time, it's just going to open up in the browser for them. Because they're just consuming data, it's not requiring them to use the plugin. If they want to share video, if they want to share their computer screen, it's going to prompt them to download the plugin. It's a really quick process, but the reason that I'm telling you this is because the web links pod is one where you'll get a different experience when your students are using the browser over the plugin. Because as a host, I can click on this Google web link and I can say browse to, and that's going to open up a web browser with the source URL in it on my computer. What it's also going to do is it's going to open that web link locally on all of your participants' computers as well. If they're not using the plugin, that functionality will not work. The participant will have to highlight the item and click the Browse To button. So that's just something to keep in mind. Really, I don't like to use the web links tool. Oh, go ahead, Dina. I just noticed Dina raised her hand.
Yeah, John, I just raised it. So, with all of these pods, okay, like
yes,
I'm pretty slow in terms of how much I can process at once. Is there? I am. You know, like when I first got on Facebook, I was just like, oh my God, how can anybody look at all this information at one time? So,
yes,
as an instructor, so I'll, you know, if I'm doing a webinar or I'm teaching a distance learning course using Adobe Connect, is there a rule of thumb that you know of regarding how many pods should actually be active on the screen for the student at one time so that they can focus on what you want them to pay attention to instead of trying to figure out where to look?
All right. So there is no official rule of thumb. However, what my advice would be is this. You have the option for multiple layouts over here. When you're thinking in advance about how you want to present your content to your audience, the best way to do that is to start from the beginning of your presentation and then create a layout for that. The next time you want to share something different, create a new layout and have that content prepared. And the idea is to keep it simple. Put as few pods on a page as possible, and then have different pods available in different layouts. So that's kind of why I jumped through all of the different layouts in the beginning. So in the lobby pod, now this is something that Worldwide has pre-configured for their faculty. In the lobby pod, they have all of this going on. For my webinar, I only had the attendees, the chat, and then I had a little welcome screen. For the presentation that I'm doing right now, I turned on my video and I have a share pod. So what I did was I kept it very simple, and that's what that new webinars and meetings template that I mentioned earlier is going to have. It's just a shared content, what you guys are seeing right now. It would be, so I'm not talking about in the shared content pod, because what you guys are seeing is EagleVision inside of EagleVision. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this, but the instructional technology window right now that you're looking at, So here, let me minimize this. There. So what you're seeing right now, this is an example of a minimalist layout. So you have the shared content, you have the video, the chat, and the attendees pod. What I wouldn't recommend doing is something like this, where were we before? Something like this, what I'm doing, where I'm walking through all of these pods. I would not recommend creating a layout that is like this because it's overwhelming. Just keep it simple. Keep the presentation as simple as you possibly can, and it'll be the easiest to navigate that way. I hope that answered your question. I kind of rambled on there for a moment. Okay, so I think I finished with the web links pod. So I'll jump down to the poll pod. Now what the poll pod allows us to do is poll our audience with any questions that we want to give them. Now, unfortunately, there isn't any tracking information on this. There is no way to export the data that we get out of this. The only functionality that it has is the ability to ask your participants a multiple choice question, a multiple answer question. So here they're going to get a radio button where they can choose one option. Here they'll get checkboxes where they can select multiple options, or short answer, and this is where they'll get a text box to type in an answer of their own. And you have the option here in the poll options to broadcast the results. So what that's going to do is it's going to give the participants the content or the results that their peers are typing in. So let me do this real fast. What is your favorite color? And I'm going to choose multiple choice. And I'm going to do red, blue, yellow, orange, and green. So when I click the open button, this is what it looks like. So it's just a multiple choice question where folks can enter in their answer, and if I broadcast the results, then everyone will see what everyone is entering. And then I have the option to end the poll, or I can edit it. So if you are looking for data, if you're looking to export some data out of there, one option that you might have is to share your computer screen and then use a tool like Poll Everywhere. And that way you'd be able to collect all of the data that your students are using. You'll have visual graphs. You can export it into a CSV. If you are not familiar with Poll Everywhere, feel free to reach out to me and I can set you up with an account and we can do some training. Dina, did you raise your hand again? Feel free to just speak up.
I did raise my hand. So with this polling feature, if I'm delivering a class session or a webinar of my own, I don't know if you said this and I missed it. Can I have that poll created prior to going live with the webinar or the class? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
How do I save it? Like,
and that's
how do I just save it and then bring it up when I need it during the class session?
All right, so with Adobe Connect, with EagleVision, what you see is what you get. So right now, I've done this where I've added this file and I've added this web link. If I close out of this, so I just completely closed out of it, and I jump back into Canvas and jump back into it, it's going to be exactly as I left it. So what you'll be able to do is set this up in advance, maybe a day ahead of time, get everything uploaded, get everything arranged the way that you want it, and then you can come back into it the next day and it'll all be ready to go. Yeah, so you don't have to do this all live. You can do this all in advance if you need to.
Hey, John, before we get to Reg's question, though, so let's say I do the poll, like you said, I really like that you mentioned that I could do this ahead of time because that's how I like to work. I don't like to do last minute stuff, even though that seems to
Yep.
be my daily existence. If I can do the poll ahead of time, do I hide it in the presenter area until I'm ready to show the students the poll during the live class sessions?
What I would probably do in that case is I would have all right. So let's go into a real world scenario. You have your course set up and you've created a lobby layout that you want your students to sit in until you get ready. So I'm going to jump back over to my lobby. So your layout is going to change. So your students are going to be sitting here. And then when you're ready to go, you can change the layout to one that you prefer to share, and this new layout can have the poll on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I can maybe create a new layout that's just for the poll. If I just want the so let's say I talk with the class for like the first 15 minutes and then I want to give them a poll, then I can just create a new layout that just has like poll number 1 and then show them that poll at that time and then hide that poll. And then let's say I want to give them a poll after another 15 minutes of class discussion, then I have another layout for poll number 2. Is that the way to go about that?
Exactly, yeah. So here, I'll just do that real fast. So I'm gonna create an existing layout. I'm gonna base this off of the presentation layout, and I'm just gonna call this poll 1. So here I've got my webcam, chat, my attendees. I'm gonna get rid of this presentation pod though, and I'm going to add a new poll. Now, I'm here, I've got my poll 1, and I've named the layout poll 1. I can also create another one. I'm going to duplicate this, I'm going to base it off of poll 1, but I'm going to call this one poll 2. Now, I'm going to have to hide this poll and add another one. So I can duplicate this as many times as I want. So I would create my questions in advance, and then I might switch between the presentation layout and the poll layout, and then the presentation layout, and then another poll layout. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to clear statuses just so that I know if anyone raises their hand or anything again. So I'm going to jump back out to this new layout because I think that I've got one more pod to show off, and that is the Q&A pod. And the Q&A pod, what this is it's a way of communicating with your audience so that people can ask you questions in private, and you can answer those questions in private, but then it'll also give you the ability to broadcast certain answers if you choose to do so. So without an audience here asking, I can't really demonstrate this. So here, actually, I can turn it on for you guys. So let me just do that real fast. So I've turned on the Q&A pod in our meeting space. If someone would like to go ahead and ask a question. No questions. Okay, so I can see Dina typed a question that says, how many faculty on our residential campus are using Adobe Connect right now? So I can let me see how I can do this. I drag this over here. I think I can make this work. Nope, because it's picture in picture. Okay, so alright, so I got some questions, so here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond to Dina privately. So I'm responding to Dina privately. I'm saying several faculty. Now, Jules asked the question, is it advisable to have multiple monitors? And I'm going to respond to Jules, absolutely. And I'm going to send this to everybody. So inside that Q&A pod, you should not be able to see the answer to Dina's question, but Dina should be able to see that. But then you guys should be able to see my response to Jules. I hope I demonstrated that as well as I could. But really so the functionality of this tool, what it does is it allows your audience to ask you questions, and then you can either answer them privately or publicly. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that. Perfect. Thank you, Dina. All right, so we should be back over in the shared screen. Now, one of the things that you might choose to do is record your class sessions or your meetings, whatever you're using Adobe Connect for. So to do that, all you have to do is just click the meeting button up here. And then one of the options here is to record meeting. And it's going to ask you to give the recording a name. You can name this whatever you want. And I'm just going to call this Webinar 1. So we're currently recording this meeting that I've created here. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to quickly stop it. And I'm going to show you where to access that recording. So back in Canvas, where we had the course meetings set up, underneath the course name, you'll have an option for recordings. If you click that, you'll see that the Webinar 1 video is right here. If I clicked on this, then it's going to open up Adobe Connect, and it's going to play back the recording of what we just recorded. Okay. Let's jump back into Adobe Connect. Yes.
Is there I think you mentioned this. I know we can do this for Kaltura videos, but with Adobe Connect, you can save it as an MP4 and we can host it, let's say, in my case, let's say I want to host it on my ERNI site as an MP4, but not access it through Adobe Connect. Is that a possibility with Adobe Connect recordings?
So if you create a recording inside of Adobe Connect, it's going to appear there in that recordings tab no matter what. But if you want to export it to an MP4 and host it somewhere else, you can do that. I was going to demonstrate that, but let me just do it with the recording that we just did. So I'm viewing the EagleVision page.
I would do the webinar within Adobe Connect, but then I would want to host it after it's recorded on my ERNI CTLE site as an MP4 file.
Okay, so you might choose to upload it to Kaltura and then get some embed code, or if you have a YouTube channel like I do, Vimeo. You can upload it into YouTube and grab.
Vimeo.
You have what?
Vimeo.
Okay, yeah, so you can upload it to Vimeo, and then you get the embed code from Vimeo, and you just paste it into your web page. Yep. So to export it to an MP4, when you're viewing the recordings, you just click this Actions button, and then Make Offline. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to open up Adobe Connect, but we're going to get some options that'll pop up. and I have three instances of Adobe Connect running right now, so I want to be careful with how many I have open. So right now what we're doing is reviewing the settings for offline recording. So it's going to allow me to choose the MP4 or the Flash video file format. I would suggest doing MP4 because I'm not sure how Vimeo is going to like Flash video. I recommend publishing it to full HD, which is going to make the size of the video a lot bigger, but if you're sharing like a web page, text will appear clear when it's in full HD. When it's in desktop or HD, it might not be as clear. So I recommend full HD, and then you just say proceed with offline recording. What it's going to do is it's going to play through the recording, and it's going to put a file on your desktop, and that file should be the finished recorded file.
That seems pretty easy.
It is pretty easy. The only thing is it kind of takes over your desktop. So, because it has to play through it in order to record. So if you have an hour-long webinar, it's gonna take over your desktop for an hour.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John.
Reg, thanks for joining. I'll send out the recording. I do realize that we are at the very end of our time, so if anyone else needs to jump out, thank you very much for attending. But to finish it up, I think that I covered mostly everything. If anybody's got any questions about anything that I didn't demonstrate, feel free to ask. The one other thing that I did want to demonstrate was how to access it from outside of Canvas. So let me jump over to another environment that you'll be very familiar with. So this is Ernie. Now, to access EagleVision from Ernie, you should have an option in the Tools section. Now, my layout may be a little different than it is for you because I'm a Daytona Beach staff member. So the residential faculty will see a different layout here than I'm seeing. But if you're not seeing EagleVision and then in parentheses Adobe Connect in the Tools menu, then you can go to All Tools and it should be listed on this page. Now, Rustin asked of all the tools that are available on Canvas, is it the best for video conference discussion? I would say yes. The built-in tool that is in Canvas is called Conferences, and it uses a system called Big Blue Button. It will allow you to do video conferences, but it won't allow you to do them at the quality that Adobe Connect or EagleVision will. If you would prefer, if you want to give your students more of a simple interface, though, if you're not sharing content, like if you're not sharing your computer screen or sharing web pages or PowerPoint presentations, if you're just having a discussion, you might choose to use Skype for Business for that. All students should have access to Skype for Business. If they have any difficulty using it, it will open up in a browser. It's actually really neat. As long as you're signed in, I'll show you how to do this. Oh, my email is closed. So if I were to create a new appointment in Outlook, there's an option up here called Skype meeting, and that will convert your Outlook appointment into a Skype meeting with a link to the meeting. So you can send this out to all of your students, and then all they have to do is click the link to join. But yes, if you're looking for something that is integrated with Canvas, EagleVision all the way. Yes, EagleVision does make it easier to share a lot of content. Now there is a limited number of. Thanks for joining, Reg. There is a limited number of supported file types. most common file type that it becomes an issue is Word documents. Unfortunately, Word documents are not supported natively by Adobe Connect. So the way to get around that is to share your computer screen and then open the Word document. Or you can upload the Word document to the Files pod and everyone can download their own local copy of the Word document. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions about EagleVision? I see Jules is typing. Give her a moment. That's good to hear. Yeah, EagleVision really is easiest to learn when you get your hands dirty. You jump in there and you play with it yourself when you play with it firsthand. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, we are 1 minute over. So I will call this meeting to a close. Yes, thank you everybody for joining. It was fun. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Actually, let me throw my business card up here. It's got my contact information in it. So you can reach out to me. And in the important links area there, I have shared a link to my instructional technology training page. Now, unfortunately, this is the last webinar for the spring semester. I do hope to get some stuff scheduled for the summer and then again in the fall. So keep an eye on that page for anything new.